Hello and welcome to a look at King's Bounty for the Amiga, a game that was released by New World Computing. Now, what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to create a character and then have the gameplay running in the background while I make a commentary about plot, mechanics, and that kind of stuff. I hope you'll accept the fact that the gameplay and my commentary doesn't line up, but I will see how much I can get covered, because there's quite a few things to get covered, and I will do my best to do so. The plot of A King's Bounty is that there's an evil dragon, and I've forgot its name. Sorry, I could easily look it up, but doesn't matter. Anyway, it doesn't like the fact that the four continents are ruled by King Maximus, and looks into finding out if there's a way to topple the king. By using various minions, some prophecies are discovered, and it turns out that the Scepter of Order in possession of King Maximus is the key. As long as King Maximus is in possession of the Scepter of Order, only order can be present, and the king is, for all intents and purposes, immortal. So, in order to sow chaos, the king has to go. Various different plot elements takes place, which is described in a very well written introduction kind of story in the manual, but I will pass over that very, very lightly. Sorry. The key points is that there are various things are set in motion in order to create a distraction, and then the evil dragon manages to gate into the castle behind the king and steal the scepter out of his hand and gate out, because one of the prophecies mentioned that the only evil that can be in the castle when stealing the scepter is the evil stealing the scepter. And the effect is immediate. King Maximus collapses and things starts turning sour. But the king is still alive, and he has to be replaced in order for chaos to be able to spread. So the dragon, of course, is waiting impatiently for him to kick the bucket, so to speak. And as luck would have it, some adventurers, champions, heroes, whatever you might call them, just happen to be around the corner. So they get in touch with the king, or the king gets in touch with them, and he gives them a commission. Find the blasted scepter, so I can get back to normal again, kind of thing. Now, game plots being game plots, you would wonder why the dragon would decide to hide the scepter instead of getting rid of it. And on top of that, why would the dragon draw a map as to the location of where it hid the scepter? Smart enough, I suppose, to split the map into several pieces divided amongst its minions and hidden under artifacts for some bizarre reason. Interesting. But your task is to take your champion and build up a force and go out and take back the map pieces. And once you have gathered enough of them to be able to decipher the hiding place, or the hiding place I think it's called, of the scepter, you can go and search for it. And once you find it, you will be the hero of all heroes. King Maximus will be back on track, and chaos will have to sort off. Very, very loosely described. You have 4 available champions: the knight, the barbarian, the paladin, and the sorcerer. And they each have different strengths and weaknesses. The knight has very high leadership, but no magical ability at all. The barbarian has the same leadership ability as the knight, but very, very meager magic. The paladin is weaker in leadership than both the barbarian and the knight, but has more magical ability than any of the two others could ever dream of. Finally, you have the sorcerer, who, surprise, surprise, has low leadership but very high magical ability. Let's do magic first, because it's easier to explain. The magical system in this game works in such a way that you need to have spell power to be able to utilize magic at all. Of course, that dictates the strength of the magic you are employing, and that is mainly in offensive magic, of course. Then you have available spell slots, which is how many spells you can have at any given point. And the spells you get comes as either spells you buy from various different towns or given to you by various different random encounters that you find through chests. You have two groups of spells, utility or non-combat spells and in-combat spells, and they will do various things based on the situation, and of course damaging spells will do damage and that kind of stuff. So the spells themselves are rather self-explanatory. Now, the knight, which has the high leadership but doesn't have any magic, means that the knight will have an easier time by and large, but among the magic the knight doesn't have access to is useful things like teleport to a town or teleport to a castle, because you can't use magic, and those are spells. So yes, it may be an easier class to play than a magical imbued one, but the utility aspect of it being missing is painful. For the purpose of this gameplay, I am using a paladin, which for me is thematically my favorite character class. The leadership. That is the key point in this game, because you are not in control of your own hero, champion, creaky chair, or whatever you call them, but you are in control of the army following you. Now, the leadership skill directly dictates how many units you can lead and the quality of them. As far as I can gather from the manual, the defining factor is that your leadership needs to be equal to or higher than the highest hit point of a unit in order to lead it. And certain units have modifiers for and against how difficult they may be to control. You can imagine that asking or telling peasants what to do is infinitely easier than telling a bunch of dragons what to do. So, in that regard, there is some fluctuation as to how strong your leadership ability is. But it directly relates to the size of your army and the quality. So, since the spells are fine and dandy, the majority of the heavy lifting is done by your troops, and that is where the sorcerer with the low leadership is worse off in many situations, because even gathering as much extra bonus leadership as possible, the sorcerer will still have relatively low compared to some of the other classes, and that means less troops. When you scout around, and it is recommended, and it is someone else who recommended it, not me, but it is recommended that when you start this game, you hire a boat from the first town and then sail around and bump into all the treasures you can find. The treasures will offer you random encounters, so not random encounters, because this, but you know what I mean, random things. Maybe you catch an imp that will benefit you with a spell. Maybe you impress some nomads and their leader increases your spell ability. Not spell power, but your ability to carry more spells. Or you can find some money. When you find money, you have the option to pocket the money yourself or share it with your peasants. Sharing it with your peasants gives you leadership, and even though it may only give 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10, any leadership increase you can get is super, super important and or beneficial, and is always worth doing. The weekly commission you get from the king should be adequate to cover any expenses you will have, and if nothing else, you will just have to make time pass so you get your commission paid a handful of times, and then money is a non-issue. Now, having high leadership and having the ability to control various different units is fine and dandy, but you also need to find them first. The world is divided into 4 continents, each with a certain theme. And in order to travel between continents, you need to find the map for the next continent. You can only find that by searching chests. The different units you can hire come in thematic setups. So you have castle units, which can only be hired from the king's castle, which includes militia, peasants, archers, cavalry, and knights. Then you have plains units, you have dungeon units, and you have other types of units, and they are all in a similar tier. Pixies are equivalent to peasants in raw strength, but they can fly, which means that on the combat map they can teleport to any square basically. Archers of any type, whether they are orcs, archers, elves, or whatever else they might be, they serve the same purpose. There is some differences between them in minor things like hit points and damage output and that kind of stuff, but by and large, the individual areas have a similar strength, except for special abilities, of course. Something like druids, they can cast lightning bolts 3 times in a combat, and in hand-to-hand they are not particularly strong, but being able to blast off 3 lightning bolts in any fight is always beneficial, so they can serve as a second or even a third, if you so desire, ranged unit, because it is recommended to have at least 2 ranged units even to soften up enemies. Then you have things like dragons, which are completely and utterly immune to magic and has more hit points than anyone else, and will do and take more damage, or can take more damage than anyone else because of the hit points, of course, and will do more damage than anyone else. But of course, they are quite hard to control, even with a very, very high leadership. And effectively, what happens if you lose control of a unit, they will go berserk. They will attack whatever is nearest, and if you find yourself with, let's say, 15 dragons, and you lose control of them, and they suddenly decide that your army is a lot more tasty to crisp than the enemy's army, you can get yourself in a situation where your own troops are destroying you. Now, losing a battle is not necessarily the end of the game. You get sent back to the king, who's going to think less of you for being a clumsy leader, and allow you to go out again. I can't remember. I'm fairly sure there's a finite amount of times he will allow that, but whatever the case, if you lose a fight, you will get sent back, get in very, very basic tools, and then go out again and try to rebuild your army. In order to find the scepter, you need to find map pieces. There are 2 artifacts per continent, which will contain 1 map piece, a map peach, must be tasty. Anyway, map piece each. And if you go through all the continents and just gather the artifacts, you'll have a minimum of 8 map pieces, but unless they are connected in an intelligent way, there's no chance that you can decipher the location of the scepter through that alone. And the game, while it randomizes a lot of things, The more revealing map pieces are usually held by the strongest minions or even the dragon, the evil dragon itself. So you can imagine that trying to brute force finding the scepter can be. I mean, it is possible, but you need some vague information of where about the scepter would be. And if you search on a location for the scepter and you fail to find it, 10 days will pass. Now, time doesn't seem to be much of a factor when you play on easy level like I do, where you have 900 days before the king gives up the ghost and the game is over. But of course, on the highest difficulty level, where you have 200 days before the king keels over and dies rather permanently, you can imagine that throwing away 10 days willy-nilly is not exactly ideal. And in that regard, it is definitely a mechanic that is mainly to prevent players playing at a higher difficulty to just go around willy-nilly searching for the scepter when they have 3 map pieces. In order to get the other map pieces, you need to lay siege to castles where the evil dragon's minions are located, and the different towns you can visit will have contracts available. They will have contracts available for the minions of the continent you are currently on, and once you have a contract, you can capture the minion and make the king happy. If you haven't got a contract, you will defeat them, but they will relocate to another castle and you'll have to chase them down again. So having a contract for a specific individual is very, very important before you lay siege to their castle. Once you have a contract, once you know where the valley is located, you will need to make sure you have siege equipment. The manual states that the siege equipment will be destroyed in the ensuing fight, but I don't know whether that's a thing on easy, that it doesn't, but in worst case, it's 3,000 gold you have to pay to replenish your siege engine, and that is not as daunting or painful as it may seem. Once you defeat a minion, underling, whatever you call them, you can take control of their castle by putting some troops in it. If you don't, at one point or another, random minions will just start spawning in the castle and you have to reconquer it, so to speak. You don't need a lot of troops, 10 militia, that's perfectly fine, as long as the castle is occupied in some way, shape, or form. That will increase your weekly income, and of course, it will prevent baddies from residing in that location, so you know it is secured. The different classes have different requirements for how many bad guys they need to catch in order to get a promotion, because the different classes can be promoted. In the case of this video, I'm playing the Paladin, which needs to capture 2 bad guys in order to be eligible for the first promotion, and I will do that in this video and show being promoted to Crusader. So, I know this is probably a bit loose, and I sort of wanted to spend more time explaining more concept of the game, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want to stretch out the length of this video longer than I absolutely have to. I do want to, by and large, make longer videos because I have gone through my library of videos and felt that the longer ones, where I spend more time explaining stuff, are of a higher quality. Feel free to disagree, but that is how I personally feel. And of course, I'm not going to spend 45 minutes on a video about Pac-Man, but you know what I mean. I'm trying very hard to extend the hopefully quality of the videos, but to a certain point, of course. Anyway, from a graphical point of view, this game is rather basic, and that's perfectly okay. You can easily identify each individual unit and structure and minion and tree and rock and wall. So in that regard, it serves the purpose it needs to serve, and it doesn't need to be more spectacular than what it is. I will draw attention to the fact that this game was released on a single 880 kilobyte floppy disk. So all things considered, the scope of the game, the type of graphics, and everything included in the game is actually quite impressive for the small amount of data used. The sound, you have the option to disable various sounds, and part of me regret that I did not disable the walking sound before recording this footage, but done is done. The sounds are not particularly spectacular. They are informative, but also annoying, and it is nice that someone thought that, these sounds can itinerary people. Let's make sure they have an option to disable them, which is a nice touch. The gameplay. This is, for all intents and purposes, a strategic game with some tactical elements in it, and the tactical elements being the combat. We have some combat showing at the moment. You have your units in a combat situation. They will do their stuff, either move or, if they have a ranged attack, use the ranged attack. Then the enemy will do the same, and that will cycle until one side has been demolished and the other side is the winner. And hopefully you want that, of course, to be you at all times. The thing is, though, there's a certain game that I played quite a bit. I still played it to the point of getting absolutely horrendously sick and tired of looking at it. A little game that you may be familiar with called Heroes of Might and Magic. It was basically the heroes from Might and Magic that was running around in a on an overhead map, capturing settlements, resources, beating others, recruiting troops. Depending on their level, they could recruit certain troops, and depending on upgrades they had built in their base, they could recruit stronger troops and all that kind of stuff, and they could find items they could equip and become more and more powerful in whatever way, shape, or form they were. And at the time, I just thought that was a unique game as such, but for some reason, King's Bounty has completely slipped under my gaming radar. And it is actually only until very, very recently that I became remotely aware of its existence. It is not as advanced, it doesn't look as good, but this is, in essence, the first seeds of Heroes of Might and Magic. Anyone who's played Heroes of Might and Magic will easily see the connection. And bearing in mind that this is a very early first draft of Heroes of Might and Magic, it plays surprisingly well. The scope of the game is, for all intents and purposes, huge. If you're trying to get all map pieces and conquer every single castle on the entire map, you have your task set out for you. It's going to be quite a daunting process. Possible, but daunting nonetheless. The combat is not necessarily super advanced, but then again, it wasn't in Heroes of Might and Magic. It was the graphical effects that made it remotely interesting. But of course, the key in combat is to try to destroy the enemy units and preserve your own even. Sometimes you have to focus fire on very, very strong units in order to get them down before they go in and start smacking your units in the face. And sometimes you just want to get rid of units that are a danger, like ghosts. Ghosts, they are so fun to fight because if they kill someone when they attack, they will add the amount that they killed to their own stack. Of course, that would make you think that stacking a bunch of ghosts is all fun and glory and all that kind of stuff. But then you get week of the peasant switching, and then suddenly all your ghosts turn to peasants, and now you have 400 peasants, which, yeah, will be one shot by an ant looking at them the wrong way. My experience with this game, and this is entirely on me because you cannot fault this game. If you are into strategy games of any kind, King's Bounty is a surprisingly well done and absolutely excellent game. But as I was saying a short while ago, I played Heroes of Might and Magic to death, and I played it to the point where I could not face playing another Heroes of Might and Magic game. So I think I played 3 of it, and I'm fairly sure some others were released after that, but I just could not get myself to even look at them. Due to that, while I can see the qualities of this game, and they are very easy to see, I can't get myself to even contemplate completing it. The gameplay I have played so many times and for so long that I don't personally find any enjoyment in it. But do not let that dishearten you in any way, shape, or form, because as I said, this is on me alone. The game is excellent for what it is. It is an awful lot of content, and you could have an awful lot of fun experimenting with what classes work and what classes don't, what combination of troops work and what don't. And as a game, and for me being some sort of game, not reviewer but overviewer kind of thing, I have to give King's Bounty the highest praise for what it is. For what it is absolutely excellent. And on that note, I can say thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye for now.